everybody. We've opened the doors out there, so hopefully it'll cool off. If you can put up with my hot air. But I do want to tell you something that I couldn't quite figure out how to put in the play, but I figured it out now. So what Annie's been doing in the last 12 years, a year after the trial, she kind of did nothing and just sort of vegetated, and like she lived with her daughters, and like she said, she was the kid and they were the parents. And then a cousin finally got tired of seeing her sitting in front of the TV and drinking or whatever she was. I don't know if she was doing that. But whatever she was doing, said, you know what, you got to get off your behind and go to college. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. And her cousin said, no, you go do something. So she did. She went to Cabrillo College, and in 2 years she graduated with a double major. And then she applied for 5 other, then she said, well, I'm done with college now, I don't know what I'm going to do. And her cousin said, yeah, well, you do. You finish this, you're going to go to a university. And she said, no, I'm not. Her cousin said, yes, you are. So she applied to 5 universities, got into all 5, including her dream university, the University of California at Berkeley. And so she graduated in 2 years, summa cum laude with a double major. Since then, she's been working, she worked for a shelter for domestic violence survivors for a while, and then now she works for a place that provides housing assistance and educational assistance for domestic violence survivors. So she, considering everything, is doing great. She comes to the performances here that she can. She couldn't come tonight. Her older daughter Danielle is in the Army still. She's stationed here stateside. She hasn't been overseas in a long time. She's advancing in her career and doing real well. Belinda went through a few different things, but now she just recently enlisted in the Air Force. And she's overseas doing real well, learning technical stuff in the Air Force. And so, yeah, they're doing amazing. They're just doing wonderful stuff. So I just for a few minutes. Usually Annie's here to answer questions, but now you're stuck with me. If you have anything about the case, the play, how it was made, anything else about her, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes?
How did she have an affair with the controlling man that he was?
That's a very good question. But you know, what she has said is when she found out, you know, you have to deal with things, right? So she figured out how to deal with him in some ways. That was during the time that he was doing his business out of town, selling thermostats, yeah. So that's when she did it. And so he was controlling in other ways, but just not about that. That's not when he started. Once he found out about the affair is when he came to work every day. So it was controlling, took into account lots of other things, but he figured that his calling her at work 15 times a day was enough, but it wasn't. Yes, Sherry.
So you were a detective working on this case,
correct?
And so the concept of writing a play based on that, how did that come about? And I imagine you would need to get permission from her?
Right. So first of all, during the trial, even Annie and I were talking about writing a book. See, we could write a book about this. Because this, like I said, it was a 3-week trial. This is a 1-hour play. There's like so much more to this. So we just had to take kind of like the highlights. And can you believe this really happened? Truth is stranger than fiction stuff here. So we were going to write a book. I have like 300 pages of manuscript of a book. It's when a true crime book, you have to get permission from lots and lots of people. Would have been real hard. So I kind of slowed down a little bit. Then about 5 years ago, a friend of mine who's a real terrific actor down in San Luis Obispo, who was a survivor herself, asked me to write a monologue for her for a theater thing. So I took a monologue based on this play. Well, it wasn't based on it, just my monologue based on Annie. And so that just seemed like a really good thing. And then a friend of mine whose son was a high school student in Arroyo Grande was directing some student theater things and asked me if I had a play, a 1-act play. And I said, about something sort of socially relevant. I said, sure I do. And then, of course, I had to write it because they didn't have it. So I wrote a 9-character, 30-minute version of this play. And then I said, wow, this needs to be more. And the criteria I had was we were never going to mention his name at all. He was going to be as minimal a character as is possible. And it was going to be all told from the viewpoint of women, because it didn't take any men to tell the story. It was just like a contrivance, but it was an organic contrivance because it was just the way it was. So it just seemed to make a good play in this format. Yeah.
How
Yes.
long was their relationship?
Pardon me? How
How
long? They were married for 19 years, and she was with him as a pen. She married him when he was in prison, but I think she pen palled and visited for about 2 years before that. Yeah, so they were together for about 21 years. Anything else?
I was wondering, how did they find the 12th juror, who had it seen, how did they do that?
Oh, they have alternate jurors.
And they
So-
sit and watch everything?
Yeah, the alternate
Oh,
jurors,
okay.
in this case we had 4 alternate jurors.
Okay.
They watch everything, but when deliberations start, then the alternates can't deliberate, which is really aggravating for alternates who've sat through 3.5 weeks of this just terrible stuff. And then they have to go home and can't talk to anybody about it and don't get to deliberate and have to keep silent until and unless they eventually get called. So yes, that's how the jury system works. Yes, sir.
Do you know if that one juror that wanted to go see him in jail, do you know what happened to her?
Well, what I found out was just last week that the investigator who worked for the defense attorney was here. He was a friend of mine. His daughter was here too, and she apparently was kind of interning him with him for a while. She said that she believes that he actually did go to the jail to visit. I never checked the jail visitation logs, I should have. So she may have, she actually, one of the other jurors who came to one of our shows last week said that she ran into the juror we're calling Rosalinda a couple years later. And she was kind of spun out of her. She was a whack job.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Sherry asked about permission. Yes, Annie has been working with, and her daughters have been working with me every step of the way. The only people whose real names I used were theirs and the prosecutor and the off-duty deputy, and I think that was it. And they all gave their permission. All the other names have been changed.
So
Yes.
what was your role in like through the process with her?
Right after she finally made 12 phone calls with the sheriff's department before they finally took a report, they made I'm trashing the Monterey County Sheriff's Department because I worked there for 16 years, and the current sheriff is one of my good friends. So, but at the time, so they made like a 1-page police report and they sent it to the district attorney's office, asking for prosecution. Well, the police report said, woman was married to an abusive man for 20 years. He burned her face with a spatula. She cut off her finger with a knife to get away. Request criminal charges for torture. That was basically the whole police report. So it got handed to me to clean up the mess. And so I just actually, that's all I had. I went to talk to Annie after I finally tracked her down. And like she says, I had a 4-hour interview. Whoa. And so then everything else, finding all the witnesses and all that is kind of what occupied me quite a bit for the next 16 months or so. Yes?
I had a friend who was going through not quite a severe but a similar problem. And I think one of the worst problems she had was convincing anyone in the police or sheriffs or prosecutor to do a damn thing about it despite evidence. I'm just wondering if you wanted to address that.
It's kind of hard for me because I can honestly say, other than this one incident that I know of, that somehow she made 12 phone calls and nothing happened. In my training with the sheriff's department, they were very strict on domestic violence and how to handle domestic violence. And I think it was handled very well in my experience at the sheriff's department. But it's really difficult. You know, if there's no visible signs of injuries, or the victim makes excuses, I fell down the stairs, right, my dog hit me in the, you know, it's hard to prosecute, it's hard, but I mean, the Monterey County District Attorney's Office, through my 30 years of law enforcement, was very good about doing it aggressively. At least most of the major police departments were very good. Some of the other police departments around here weren't so good. You know, it's just constant training and having supervisors who hold their people responsible for doing good. It's not perfect, you know, because we hear stories all the time. I don't know, you know, it's training, constant training over and over and over again. And some people just don't believe it. Some people just choose not to believe it, you know. All right, thank you very much. Thanks, These 16 actors came from all over, from South Monterey County, from Santa Cruz, to come do this. A lot of them do musical theater and other things. A lot of them have a lot bigger parts. 15 of them have a 2-minute monologue, and they took their time to do this. And one of them has 15 2-minute monologues, and she's amazing. So, thank you guys.